City of Port Alberni, testing for YouTube. 1, 2, 3.
All right, welcome everyone. We will call to order our regular meeting of council and start by acknowledging and recognizing that we work, live, and play in the city of Port Alberni, which is on the unceded traditional territories of the Sechot and Hupachesit First Nations. Council, we do have an agenda in front of us. Are there any late items to add from members of council? Seeing none, any late items from our corporate officer?
No late items, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. Then would somebody like to move approval? Moved by Councillor Solda of our agenda, seconded by Councillor Mealy. No discussion on the motion. All in favor? Carried, none opposed. And on to adoption of minutes. We have minutes from the special meetings held January 23rd, 2025, special and regular meetings held January 27th, 2025, special meetings held January 29th, 2025, and February 5th, 2025 to be adopted. Move to adopt from Councillor Solda, seconded by Councillor Mealy. Any comments on the minutes? Seeing none, on the motion, all in favor? Carried, none opposed. We have no delegations today, so on to unfinished business. We have the 5-year financial plan Q&A. Any items councillors would like to speak to, ask questions about, or questions to add? Seeing none, would somebody like to move to receive? Moved by Councillor Dame, seconded by Councillor Mealy. Seeing no comments on the motion, all in favor? Carried, none opposed. And staff reports, item number 1, we have quarterly reports, and we'll start with finance.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So for the fourth quarter of 2024, finance was focused on obviously the financial plan. That was the bulk of the work by the director and many of the support changes as far as the budgeting through the assistant accountant, but that was a bulk of the time through the first quarter. When we look at the procurement support, we had a few procurements that occurred over the fourth quarter, a little bit quieter than normal, but we had a notice of intent, request for proposal for the City Works building roof, and then the notice of intent to sell the fire truck, the ladder number 2, and then a notice of intent to have a decant dehumidifier at the multiplex. So a few minor procurements that were undertaken at the fourth quarter. We did wrap up a few grants, one for the Connect the Keys. So we finalized the final submission for the Connect the Keys grant and the Child Care Center. So those funds came through in the fourth quarter or early in the first quarter of 2025. Finance staff also supported making some changes as far as electronic means, as far as payroll entry, and also moving to an online credit card reporting system for financial reporting purposes. So it helps streamline some processes and reduces in some duplications. So we're definitely looking forward to those changes. In the fourth quarter, we also had one property that went to tax sale. Just so council is aware, that is quite a cumbersome process once we undertake the sale, and it does take quite a bit of effort to make sure that we follow up with the documentation and filing to ensure that the property owner is made aware of that. But our staff do quite a diligent job as far as ensuring that we get redemption on these properties and first of all, not go to tax sale. So we did have this one property redeemed, so that was a good outcome, and I really thank staff for all the effort on that. During the last quarter, we also had utility billing, so we did have quite a few meters changed out in the last quarter of the year, so that resulted in some additional work, making sure we had the transition and changes done in the system so that the meter reading could occur. So that was undertaken in the first quarter to have the bills sent out in early January. And then with asset management, we had our manager seconded to the infrastructure department to support the master planning process while we had a vacancy in infrastructure. So the asset management and master planning go hand in hand, so it was a perfect fit for this employee to head over there and really support the master planning process. So within the report, we kind of listed all the details. I won't go into that, but that was a good outcome as far as supporting those processes. IT had some other work undertaken, so there was cybersecurity updates. We had some server migration that takes significant time to do the downtime and then switch over and move the systems over to the new server. Software updates, this is a continuous process, but we've also tried to improve some of the softwares that we have and have some better programs to support the organization as it comes to functioning within all our systems. We, of course, have our onboarding and offboarding of staff, so that does ensure that we do take staff off and then put staff on as they need throughout the city. And then with the utility updates, we did look at some controls that we have in our various facilities as far as HVAC and control, so we're making some improvements there. And then, of course, our utility work at the RCMP is undertaken by our IT staff over there. Looking at the future, we also look at improving some of the electronic means. So a lot of our processes are still in the paper base, so we're switching over and we're trying to ensure that our accounts payable is now moving to electronic means, so we could easily access files. Quite often we do have to go down and pull things from the archives, so we're starting to look at just grant reporting, other means that we have to recall invoices, and even when it comes to the audit committee, when we talk about invoices or stuff, it would be nice to have things at our fingertips rather than go back and bring information a little bit more quickly. So a lot of these processes do take a lot of effort and system changes, but we're looking forward to making these. So I'll just leave it at that. If council has any questions, we could follow up with those.
Thank you very much. Any questions? Seeing none, thank you very much for the report. And our next one is economic development.
Madam Mayor, fourth quarter of 2024 seems so long ago and far away. I start with an apology. There's a typo in the second line under target initiatives. Quarter was misspelt. But moving on to comments about the report, as the Director of Finance said, we got the final report for the SOMAS Lands Keystone Project grant in, which is a grant for $1 million towards that project. The second thing I'd like to note under key activities is we did an expression of interest for creative artists to assist with a logo for our Choose Port Alberni website, which is our investment attraction website, and we will bring to council at a future date to talk about, because there's some very cool functions on there, and we're quite thrilled with what it's doing. But the expression for interest, people were given 8 days to respond, and we had 32 responses. Most of those were from people we did not know were in the community. So they're remote workers, some of them working with Fortune 500 companies, some of them working in Europe and elsewhere around the planet. It was actually quite humbling to see the response, and also quite inspiring. So we are going to do a bigger call out for creative artists, a more general one in nature to get a better sense of who else is in the community. Moving on, I want to make a remark that sits under the summary, and I've had a couple of conversations with developers over both the last quarter and the current one, and they've all been quite consistent in saying to me that although your approval time for applications and permits has fallen, you're pretty much in line with other communities, but, and this is a big but, the return on investment for them is higher in the other communities. So, and I know it's easy to say and harder to do, but I think anything that we can do to support the development services staff in either upping their numbers or engaging in a process to curtail or cut the time taken for application would be money well invested. So I don't normally come to council with a plug for another department, but that's definitely one. And then looking forward, I think my primary work right now is staying focused on tariff implications for our businesses, large and small. And so those would conclude my remarks. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you very much. Any questions? Councillor Solda.
Just a quick kudos to our economic manager from the Film Commission. They were very impressed with you and for helping them throughout the course, and to the city of Port Alberni. It's interesting. I was sort of giving a quick little wrap up to Pat, and the Chamber of Commerce had a meeting with the Film Commission, and members could attend, anybody, the public could attend, and it was interesting because they also said there is, like, you got to meet a lot of the Port Albernians there that are part of the film industry, which really blows me away of how many people are involved. I mean, we have a film scout here that actually worked on this film, the films that were shot here, and it continues to do so, and also, like, just people that work in the industry, and they prefer Port Alberni as their place of residence. And the film industry actually is really happy coming to the island and Port Alberni, even though they have to go over the hump, because if you live in Vancouver, in the film industry, it takes 3-4 hours to get to from A to B, so they prefer to here. So they really were really happy with the way the city treated them, and that's what it's all about, is just how you treat them. But they're also looking for 1,000, like a mansion for our next film. If you have a mansion floating around in Port Alberni, please let Pat Deacon know. Thanks.
Thank you. Any other comments? Okay, seeing none, thank you very much for your report, Pat. Would somebody like to move receipt? Thank you. Moved by Councillor Mealy, seconded by Councillor Dane. Seeing no comments on the motion, all in favor? Carried. Unopposed. And item number 2, quarter 4 procurement report.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So the procurement report for the fourth quarter is provided to council for consideration. If council has any questions, I'm here to answer.
Thank you very much. Any questions from council? Councillor Mealy.
Thank you very much, Madam Mayor, and I know we've said this many times, but thank you very much, Director of Finance, for this report. Just if there are the people in the public who have any questions on contracts awarded, big contracts awarded, and if you have any questions on the rankings and that, it is in this report.
Absolutely. Thank you. Motion to receive from Councillor Mealy, seconded by Councillor Dame. Seeing no comments on the motion, all in favor? Carried, none opposed. Thank you very much. And item F, 2020, first item at bylaws 2025 to 2029 financial plan bylaw number 5123, 2025.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So today, administration is recommending that we provide second reading. Second reading, of course, doesn't mean there is no ability to change. We still have the opportunity to have input. Also provide anything for follow-up, any questions, and make any amendments moving forward. So if there are, we can still consider that before third reading, just ensuring that we do present the financial plan based on what it would be at that time. So second reading is just part of the process, so we will seek that approval. With the last Committee of the Whole meeting on the 3rd of February, we had some amendments that were recommended to Council for consideration. Some of those included some of the IRF changes as far as pushing some vehicles off, but also maintaining some that the committee had some questions about. We did follow up with Infrastructure Services, and we have the manager of fleet here today to answer any questions should council have regarding some of the fleet. But with that and some of the changes that we did make for moving away from taxation to the IRF because of these shifts that we've made and some of the utilization of the asset renewal reserve for lease property, the taxation has moved from 16.4% to 14.18% based on what is currently provided to council today. In the recommendations from the committee. Obviously, the financial plan doesn't change until the council makes those amendments, but when this change is made, or should it be changed, those will be updated at the next Committee of the Whole. So with the recommendations from the committee, I'm here to provide any further detail, or as I mentioned, we do have infrastructure staff in the gallery to support any further questions with the IRF. So with that, I hand it back to council for consideration.
Councillor Mealy.
Thank you very much, Madam Mayor. Through you to Director of Finance or Infrastructure as well. So we did have a large discussion last meeting about the mower and the Tacoma that is scheduled for replacement. Can I just have a little more information on the 2014 Tacoma then? I did see it out in public this week. I didn't get underneath it or anything like that, or drag myself on the snow to look at it, but just an idea of how many kilometers are on it, where it's at, and the reason for replacement, please.
Yeah, through the mayor, that vehicle has started to give our mechanics some serious ongoing issues, which has added to added maintenance costs and extended periods of downtime while compromising the reliability of that vehicle. That vehicle has about 230,000 kilometers on it and sees extended use on gravel roads while maintaining our city water system. If that vehicle could be used elsewhere in the fleet, I would definitely recommend that, but in this case, I do not.
Thank you very much. That's very helpful. Councillor Solda, did you have a comment? No? Okay. Councillor Haggard.
This is in regards to the suggestion from Councillor Solid at the Committee of the Whole meeting to supply 50% of the funding from the Alberni Valley Community Forest Reserve by approximately $250,000. If this is passed by council, I was wondering if council would be agreeable to putting up some kind of signage thanking community forest or some kind of acknowledgement for their contribution to the multiplex.
Absolutely. I think that's a great idea. Okay. Would somebody like to move second reading? Councillor Mealy.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Move that the City of Port Alberni 2025-2029 Financial Plan Bylaw Number 5123-2025 be read a second time.
Thank you. Moved by Councillor Mealy, seconded by Councillor Patola. And seeing no comments on the motion, all in favor? Carried, none opposed. Thank you. Thank you very much. Item number 2, fire control bylaw and levels of service policy.
Good afternoon. So before you today is the fire control bylaw as well as the level of service policy. So if you recall back on November 12th, this was first introduced to council as a consolidated bylaw as it had appeared in its current rendition. Then at the December 9th council meeting, there was direction from council to separate out a policy which would incorporate what was previously Schedule A and B, which outlines the services that the fire department provides as well as where we provide those services. So we went about that work. What's in front of you now is exactly that. Another change that you'll note is that upon further review of what was Schedule D, which is the penalties section, we did discover that we were trying to look for the maximum appropriate penalty, which we thought to be $1,000. Upon further review, we realized that in order to exceed $500, we would need to issue that through the municipal ticket information system. That system is currently not set up by the city and would require an increase in level of service by the bylaw department, and they're just not resourced right now in order to do that. So we did go back in and reduce those fines from $1,000 to $500. The last thing I'll note is that at the January 27th regular council meeting, there was a motion put forward and carried, which would take care of recommendation D within this report's recommendation, which was authored before the 27th. So my recommendation now would be to just read in A, B, and C, but that D would be covered and then some by the motion that was put forward by Councillor Patola on the 27th. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Patola, did you want to start?
I'm not really sure I have anything to say on this.
Okay. Any other comments? Councillor Solda, you can go ahead and read it then.
Madam Mayor, I'll just let me find it here. I'll move that the third reading of the fire control bylaw number 5122, 2024 be rescinded.
Thank you. Moved by Councillor Solda, seconded by Councillor Mealy. Seeing no comments on the motion, all in favor? Carried, none opposed.
And Madam Mayor, I move that the fire control bylaw number 5122, 2024 be read a third time as amended.
Thank you. Moved by Councillor Solda, seconded by Councillor Mealy. Any comments? Seeing none on the motion, all in favor? Carried, none opposed.
And C, that council approve policy number 7001, Port Alberni Department Levels of Service.
Thank you. Moved by Councillor Solda, seconded by Councillor Patola. Comments? Seeing none on the motion, all in favor? Carried, none opposed.
And D, that council direct administration to bring back a report to a committee of the whole meeting prior to Q2 2025, which gives more detail on the levels of service provided as outlined in the Port Alberni Fire Department Levels of Service Policy Number 7001.
Thank you. Go ahead, Councillor Mealy.
Sorry, I just apologize, just within the conversation we just had, I believe the fire chief said that this motion was not needed at this time.
Sorry, yeah, I let you keep going, but
You just like to sound like this.
and I think that makes sense. So we can just rescind that if that's okay, unless somebody would like to take different action. Okay, go ahead, Sarah.
It wasn't seconded, so we can just pretend it never happened.
It never
Yes,
happened.
definitely. But I was just asking if any member of council would like to put forward any other motion regarding. Wonderful. Okay.
I was on a roll.
You were on a roll. It was great. Thank you. Okay, item number 3, Parks and Public Places, a recommendation from the February 3rd, 2025 Committee of the Whole meeting. And we have our director here. Council, are there any questions? This is just first reading. We've had discussion on this. I'm not sure if there'll be questions for the director, or would somebody like to start? Councillor Dame.
Thanks, Madam Mayor. Yeah, I'm not sure how much I want to get into it again, because I took up a lot of time at the Cal meeting discussing a few questions and concerns I had, and there wasn't I feel like a whole lot of discussion in general from everyone else. But I just wanted to make sure that as we make this decision, that we understand the implications of whether or not people can actually set up practically in any location, and the problems that might come by not having clarity for those who might need to do so. So personally, I would prefer to hold off until we had seen a map of where an unhoused person could potentially spend the night if needed. And obviously, I'm not saying I'm advocating for tent villages to be set up or anything like that, unless it were deliberate and managed and such. But I think I just want to reiterate my comments last time, that I feel that it's the way it's presented, it would not be very easy for somebody to actually understand where they could, if needed, set up a temporary tent.
Thank you. Councillor Patola, did you have your hand up? No? Okay. Any other comments? Okay, not seeing any. Councillor Mealy, would you like to read the motions?
Sure, I'll start off, Madam Mayor. I'll move that Parks and Public Places bylaw number 5121/2024 be now introduced and read a first time.
Thank you. Moved by Councillor Mealy, seconded by Councillor Haggard. Seeing no additional comments on the motion, all in favor? Any opposed? Motion carried. And go ahead, Councillor Mealy.
I move that Parks and Public Places bylaw number 5121/2024 be read a second time.
Thank you. Moved by Councillor Mealy, seconded by Councillor Haggard. Seeing no comments on the motion, all in favor? Opposed? Motion carried. Thank you.
I'll move that Parks and Public Places bylaw number 5121/2024 be read a third time.
Thank you. Moved by Councillor Mealy, seconded by Councillor Haggard. Seeing no comments on the motion, all in favor? Opposed? Thank you. Motion carried. Okay. Thank you. Yeah, go ahead, Councillor Mealy.
Just a question, Madam Mayor, so just for clarification for everybody at home, the final adoption of this will be at the next council meeting, if I'm not mistaken?
Yes, absolutely. Thank you. Okay, and no correspondence for action today, so on to proclamations. Item number 1 from the Kinsman Club of Port Alberni. Councillor Dame, would you like to read this?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I move the council on behalf of the Kinsman Club of Port Alberni proclaim February 17th to 21st, 2025 as Kinsman and Kinette Week in Port Alberni.
Thank you. Moved by Councillor Dame, seconded by Councillor Haggard. Any comments? Seeing none on the motion, all in favor? Carried. Any opposed? Sorry, none opposed. And item 2 from Heritage BC. Councillor Haggard, would you like to read this one?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'd like to move that council on behalf of Heritage BC proclaim the week of February 7th to the 23rd, 2025 as Heritage Week in Port Alberni.
Thank you. Moved by Councillor Haggard, seconded by Councillor Solda. Seeing no comments on the motion, all in favor? Carried, none opposed. Item number 3 from the Vancouver Island Down Syndrome Society. Councillor Solda, would you like to read this one?
Madam Mayor, I move that the council on behalf of Vancouver Island Down Syndrome Society proclaim March 21st, 2025 as World Down Syndrome Day in Port Alberni.
Thank you. Moved by Councillor Solda, seconded by Councillor Mealy. Any comments? Seeing none on the motion, all in favor? Any opposed? Carried, none opposed. Item number 4 from GBS and CIDP Foundation of Canada. Councillor Patola, would you like to read this one?
Yes, Madam Mayor. I'd like to move that council, on behalf of GPS CIDP Foundation of Canada, proclaim May 2025 as GBS/CIDP Awareness Month in Port Alberni.
Thank you. Moved by Councillor Patola, seconded by Councillor Solda. Any comments? Seeing none. On the motion, all in favor? Carried, none opposed. Thank you. On to correspondence for information, and I'll go to our corporate officer.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So there's an item from the Union of BC Municipalities providing the 2023 Complete Communities Grant Payment, an item from Canadian Union of Postal Workers with the Industrial Inquiry Commission Review, BC Transit announcing that the West Coast Transit System has transitioned to BC Transit Service. We received council election results from Sashot First Nation and a letter sent on behalf of Gord Johns MP regarding negative environmental and social impacts of shipbreaking.
Thank you. Councillor Solda.
Madam Mayor, have we sent, haven't seen it come across our desks, but a T-Shot First Nation, have we sent a congratulations to their new election and new council?
We have not, and we can absolutely do that. Thank you. Okay, Councillor Haggard.
Councillor Solda read my mind.
I'm good.
All right, any other comments? We need a motion for that, sorry. No. Okay. Okay. Would somebody like to move receipt? Motion to receive from Councillor Mealy, seconded by Councillor Dame. Seeing no comments on the motion, all in favor? Carried, none opposed. And report from in camera, and we've got a number of items here, so I will go to our corporate officer to read them.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So Council's releasing the following resolutions from in camera: that staff prioritize the processing of zoning amendment, development permit, and building permit applications for the proposed permanent supportive housing project located at 3027 and 3037 2nd Avenue. That council appoint Joshua Dalling, Callan Noy, and Colin Schultz to the Community Investment Program for a 1-year term. That council appoint Corey Bratter to the Advisory Planning Commission for a 2-year term. And that council direct administration to advertise remaining vacancies for interested individuals to serve on the Advisory Planning Commission and Alberni Valley Heritage Commission. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Solda.
Madam Mayor, there's been a lot of discussion in the public regarding the 2nd Avenue. Can someone explain just so the public understands what supportive housing means? It'd be great in detail for just the public to be aware.
Thank you. Mike, did you want to try that?
Sure. Thanks for the question. I think it would be best when BC Housing does it. They're going to be doing a public notification. It should be coming out very shortly. I know it was reviewed by the City of Port Alberni. Soon notices will be handed out. So I think from the actual agency that's running it, it would be best to describe exactly what is in location.
I think they have sent that public notice out, which is what's causing some of the discussion and questions in the public. I know that there is a business group that has a Facebook chat that has had a pretty large amount of discussion about it in a welcoming way of, can we get more information and have an opportunity for input. So I think we will pass along to BC Housing specifically that there is a group of uptown merchants who would like to have an information session to learn more. But at I think a higher level, there's questions about what is supportive housing versus just, shelter supports, et cetera. So I think we don't necessarily want to get into exactly what type of housing is going to be offered there because we are not the proponents, but the intent is that it will be supportive long-term housing, I believe is our understanding, and not temporary shelter supports. That said, it's not our project, so I think we want any members of the public who have input or have questions to reach out to BC Housing. And we can certainly connect. Maybe we could put something on our social media page just so that any members of the public who do have questions know who to go to with those questions. Thank you. And thanks for
Wonderful,
raising
thank
that.
you.
Okay, moving on to council reports. Item K, do any members of the public have items they'd like to highlight? Councillor Haggard.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'd just like to remind everybody about the upcoming Coldest Night of the Year event. It's the annual fundraiser for Sage Haven Society. It is going to be held at the Legion this year, which is a new place to have it. The check-ins start at 4 o'clock if you're planning on walking. The walk actually starts at 5 o'clock. And chili is going to be served afterward by the Salvation Army food truck. You can either walk 2K or 5K. I'll be going. Councillor Dame and his lovely family will be going. Councillor Rabuki has volunteered to do the short walk, and our CEO and his wife are going to be coming as well. So it's always a really great event, lots of fun. So I would encourage community members to come out and support this event fundraiser. Thank you.
Thanks for that. What was the date, Councillor Haggard?
Sorry, February 22nd.
Thank you. Okay, any other comments or items from council reports? Okay. Seeing none, would somebody like to move receipt? Moved by Councillor Mealy, seconded by Councillor Dame. On the motion, all in favor? Carried, none opposed. And items of new business, item number 1 is development application for 3325 Johnston Road.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. We'll see whether our... I'm sorry, Sarah. Oh, okay, maybe. Oh. Okay. Someday, we do believe that this will work. Before council today is a application for a development variance permit and a development permit for a motel or hotel site on 3325 Johnson Road. This is a recently subdivided piece of property. The variance request is to increase the maximum building height from 9 meters to 14.1 meters, so a variance of just over 5 meters. This variance would enable a 4-story hotel development to occur on the property. Aha. Was that you or is that me? Oh, all right. All right. I was trying to be optimistic. In front of you, you can see a site plan. The area of the recently created parcels in front of the Walmart and outlined in yellow. So this will be the site of the property. Next slide. This is an elevation of the proposed hotel development. This would be the front facing, so this portion of the hotel would be fronting towards Johnson Road. Next slide. The area outlined in yellow this is a site plan that shows where the hotel site is going to be located on the property. So it's not right up against Johnson Road. It's pretty close to the internal driving aisle between the Walmart and this hotel development site. I should indicate this is a 4-story, 76-room hotel development with a pool and water slide as part of the component. And so the building is kind of in the middle of the site, closer to John Street, but not right up against John Street as well. Next slide. So the variance would essentially enable 2 additional stories, so additional 46 rooms. The reduced height, the building is a reduced height near John Street. So the maximum height is further away from John Street. So you can see on the right-hand side of the building, which is the pool portion of it, that is only 9.7 meters. So the portion closest to John Street, where there's adjacent residential on the other side of John Street, is not the maximum height that is being considered by the variance. So there'll be no real shadow impact on nearby residents, given the significant setback from John Street and the lower height of the building in this area. As far as any traffic impact for the additional room, this property is a large property. It is zoned for a hotel development. And of course, we have a fully controlled intersection, like signaled intersection at Johnson and Bird Street. The Ministry of Transportation and Infrastructure was also required to sign off on this subdivision, and they did not require any offsite improvements from a traffic point of view. So this was reviewed from that point of view, and they've had no concerns whatsoever. Next slide. Also, council is being considered, while we have this in front of you, to the forming character development permit area. The staff have reviewed this application. It does meet the guidelines, including the perimeter landscaping, some building articulation and different materials. And we did have a light analysis done to ensure that it did not spill onto any adjacent private properties. And it does meet all the zoning bylaw requirements. Again, no off-site improvements were required by Modi or the city. Any internal comments or that were made, we've addressed during this review process. Staff do not anticipate any negative impacts on the surrounding properties. Council certain communications. So this application did go to the Advisory Planning Commission, and they did support this application. 55 letters were sent out to owners and occupants within 100 meters of this property. As of the date of the written of this report, no written comments were received by the city. Council has options: A, to consider the and approve and authorize the development variance permit to allow the increased height on this property. If council passes that variance motion, council could also pass the motion to approve the development permit, but the development permit is subject to the height variance. So if council was to deny the variance, then we would need to go back to the applicant and they would need to redesign their project. And of course, council could always ask staff to provide any additional information. Staff do support this application and are recommending that council consider issuing the development variance permit number 116 and development permit number 22-07, and I'd be pleased to answer any questions.
Thank you very much. Questions from council? Councillor Haggard.
Not a question, but a comment. When my husband and I travel, this is the kind of location that we look for to stop. It's got a hotel, it's got shopping in case you need to pick up anything. You can get gas, and there's different options that you can go and buy food. So it's a perfect location, and with people traveling to the communities of Culet, Tofino, I'm sure it's going to be full from the start. And we've already identified that we're very short of hotel rooms in this community. This is greatly needed. So if I may, could I read the motion? I'd like to move that council authorize the issuance of development variance permit number 116 and that the Director of Corporate Services be authorized to sign the permit granting the following variance to the zoning bylaw at 3325 Johnson Road. Vary section 5.18.2 C4 site development regulations, maximum height principal building from 9 meters to 14.1 meters for a variance of 5.1 meters.
Thank you. Moved by Councillor Haggard, seconded by Councillor Solda. Councillor Mealy.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Just more along the lines of the process here, and just a question either to you or to staff, because the letters were sent out, we haven't had any responses yet. However, I do know there is at least one person in the attendance today who is here because of that letter, and I'm just wondering, was there a deadline for them to comment? Are they here? Are they allowed to comment? Or and I'm not saying that he has a comment. I'm just he's here for this reason, and I just want to make sure I got the process right.
Thank you, Scott. Are you able to speak to the process?
The notice would have indicated a time when they could have submitted a written submission. It is up, council does have the purview if you so wish. If someone does wish to make a comment for council to hear them, if council wishes.
Thank you very much. Councillor Solda, and then we'll come back.
Yeah, just a quick question, because we've had some issues before regarding the mail strike or anything. It didn't be impaired by the mail strike or anything. Just touching that, because there was that.
The notice was recently sent out. There's rules around that. The mail strike was over before this notice was issued.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. Then would council like to welcome a member of the public up if there's interest?
I was just going to say I haven't talked to him about it. I just know he's here for that reason, and I don't even know if he's got comment, but I just want to give the opportunity. That's all.
Absolutely. So is council supportive of welcoming up a member of the public if there's interest? Yes, thank you. So if any member of the public would like to speak to this issue prior to us voting on it, then just please raise your hand. Well, I don't believe that we're ready now. Just for clarity, even if you're not within the distance, you're able to speak to it. So if you would like to speak, you just come to the microphone. Okay. Thank you.
Paul Chomakwich, 5160 Long Road. Believe we're probably out of the 100-meter range. We didn't receive any notification via paper or hard copy. My wife did on her phone. I'm not sure whether it was through Facebook or some other social media. As far as comments go, I welcome the prospect. I can't see any downside. We were there when the construction of Walmart, no frills and all of that, and Nightmare doesn't quite cover it. I'm assuming that this will be somewhat less, that we're not going to be dodging large off-road construction trucks as we're trying to drive to our property. Having said that, we were assured that that wouldn't happen the first time around, and it did. Because of the location I don't foresee any problems. I do welcome the development. Okay.
Thanks very much for your contribution. Okay. And not seeing any other hands. Any other comments or questions from council? Okay, seeing none, then the first part of the motion, A, has been read, moved and seconded. On the motion, all in favor? Carried, none opposed. And go ahead, Councillor Haggard.
Thank you. I'd like to move that council authorize the issuance of development permit number 2207 and that the Director of Corporate Services be authorized to sign the permit, including the development plans as shown on Schedule B prepared by Thai Studios Architecture, Inc. and dated January 15th, 2025.
Thank you. Moved by Councillor Haggard, seconded by Councillor Solda. Any comments? Seeing none, on the motion, all in favor? Carried, none opposed. Thank you. And next item on our agenda is FIFA and recommendation from Committee of the Whole. Are there any councillors who would like to speak to this? Councillor Haggard.
I attended a meeting last week, not on behalf of council, just as somebody who has organized a lot of hockey events in the community, and I offered my little expertise of knowledge that I have to them. So I will be working with them, and we will be meeting with BC Soccer next month. They're coming over to Ireland to look at the facilities, and we'll get a better idea of exactly what they're needing and what they're looking for.
Thank you very much for doing that. That's great. Councillor Haggard, would you like to read the motion?
Thank you. I'd like to move that council direct administration to provide a letter of support and principle for the FIFA 2026 friendly matches and cultural celebration.
Thank you. Moved by Councillor Haggard, seconded by Councillor Mealy. Seeing no comments on the motion, all in favor? Carried, none opposed. And item number 3, 2025 to 2029 financial plan, all of our recommendations from our Committee of the Whole. Let's see, Councillor Mealy, would you like to start by reading this out? And then again, Council, just process-wise, we can vote on them all as a whole, or A, B, and C, or if any member of Council would like to sever them and vote individually, that can be requested after they've been read. Go ahead, Councillor Mealy.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I move that council direct administration to amend the City of Port Alberni 2025-2029 financial plan bylaw number 5123-2025 as follows. I defer the following equipment from the Equipment Replacement Reserve Fund in 2025 to 2026. A, replace 2008 Dodge Ram 3500 flat deck shop truck, number 150, $46,182. Replace 2011 Freightliner asphalt patch truck, number 266, $415,000. C, replace 2013 Volvo dump tandem axle 267 at $194,386. Replace 2005 John Deere loader number 350, $288,285. Replace 2005 Volvo grader number 355, $306,818. Replace the 1990 Britco office trailer number 369, $26,258. Replace the 1995 Bomag roller number 395, $60,696. Replace 2004 Chevy 3500 Cube van used number 616, $51,724. Replace 2006 Ford E350 15-passenger van number 619, $62,016. J, replace 2012 Chevy 3500 service truck 521, $77,681. And part of that is add funding from Equipment Replacement Reserve Fund in 2025 for the following. A, replace 2014 Toyota Tacoma number 522, $50,470, additional funding of $24,830 for a new allocation of $75,300. B, replace 2015 Ventrac mower number 609, $41,184, additional funding of $29,616 for a new allocation of $70,800. Also, utilize equipment replacement reserve fund to fund solid waste trucks in 2025 rather than taxation for a tune of $290,880, and utilize the lease asset management allocation in 2025 for the RCMP storage upgrades for $150,000 rather than taxation. So that's A.
Thank you. And, sorry, is there a seconder? Seconded by Councillor Patola. Any discussion? Councillor Patola.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I would like to, only because I would like to pull out I, A through IJ, vote independently on these. The concerned about 2I, 3I, and 4I.
Absolutely. Okay, so, and Councillor Patola, are you okay if we go AI and then A1 and then A2 separately? Or are you wanting to break out some of that initial?
I wanted to break out AI, A through AIJ as a group.
Okay.
So the list of A through J as a group, I'd like to break out.
Perfect, okay. And any comments on, yep, go ahead, Councillor.
And the reason for breaking it out, Madam Mayor, is that I continue to have risk aversion to the possibility of increased costs for these vehicles as a result of looming tariffs that may not loom, may loom. So it's just reducing the liability of future potential to have to pay more for these items. I'm not even sure that all of these items can be purchased before tariffs come into effect, but I'd sure like to try. Thank you.
Thank you for that. Okay, so council, discussion and voting just first on the first section, which includes all of the A through I. Any other comments? Councillor Solda.
So if if the tariffs do come and it's 25% and we order the vehicles, we order them before the tariffs, would we still have to pay the 25 as they cross the border? I guess that's how it works. Will work.
CEO.
Yeah, thanks for the question. That's a hard one, but I think really if we went out for pricing right now, they would probably write in the contract something about uncertainties of things that they don't control. A lot of contracts, when you sign them, unless the vehicle is already built and sitting in the lot, will actually have a clause in there about things outside of their control and how they may pass on those costs.
So just to follow up, is there none of these kind of vehicles in Canada? I'm just throwing that one out to you. Are they?
Through the chair, they might all be built, set up on a yard somewhere in Canada and all for sale, maybe 40% off, but we don't know at this time. So until we actually went out to bid and put out our specifications, we wouldn't have the answer to that.
Thank you. Councillor Mealy.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So, and just maybe on the procedure of how this works, because it's part of the budget, so we wouldn't be replacing these units until the budget is passed, correct? So, because it's part of the budget, so we wouldn't even we'd be looking at it right now, but we were not giving staff the power to buy them today until the budget's passed. Am I correct?
Absolutely, unless we wanted to give early approval, which is always within council's purview to do. Thank you. Council, I think that I appreciate Councillor Patola's thought, and I think that it's a very fair thought that much of what we do could get a lot more expensive if and when the tariffs come. I think while I appreciate that there's a chance we may be able to get these vehicles cheaper now versus if we wait, I think my high-level thought on this, and there's so much that's unpredictable, as we just sort of speculate on trying to handle a very uncertain situation as best we can. I think my overall thought is that should the tariffs come, there's going to be a lot bigger discussions, and we may be ultimately downsizing our fleet in some ways. We may be putting off purchases multi-years into the future, we may be looking to repair vehicles because that ends up being a lot cheaper than replacing them. So we might need a larger strategy change should those tariffs come in. And I think right now there's a lot of speculating because it's the best we can do. So while I appreciate the sentiment that they may be cheaper to replace now, I still feel uncomfortable replacing them now with so much uncertainty about what is coming. So yeah, I'm not sure there's a perfect way to do this, but I think I still feel more comfortable holding off with the recognition that holding off till next year may mean we still don't purchase them next year because of tariffs. They may be more expensive. We may have to repair some of them in different ways or look at alternative options as a result of all the uncertainty. So, Councillor Mealy and then Councillor Haggard.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I agree with you on that. I think holding off would probably be the right thing at this point. Also, too, I mean, some of these vehicles, and I'm not talking about the trailer, obviously, but some of these vehicles you can find on the used market a couple of years old. I'm thinking just the first one. It's a Dodge Ram 3500 flat deck. It's just a 3500, could be a regular cab, and just put a flat deck on it. Those things are everywhere, and we could pick one up as a 2020. And it would be more efficient, and then you don't pay the tariff on it as well. It's a used vehicle; you're just paying tax on it from a Canadian to a Canadian. So, yeah, I think there's some uncertainty, like you said. I think holding off is the right thing, but I also think there's some ways we don't have to buy a brand new truck. I mean, don't get me wrong. If there's only a John Deere loader that's brand new that we can get, okay, I understand that. But there's also other municipalities that are getting rid of their stuff too, and they're still in good operational shape. So there's still some cost savings there potentially.
Thank you. Councillor Verbrugge and then Councillor Haggard.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Charlie, Councillor Mealy may have a different thought on this, sorry. But in the beginning of COVID, brand new trucks, vehicles you couldn't get. And the price of secondhand vehicles skyrocketed. So the same thing may happen. Trying to play the game, we probably lose. I don't know, I always have. Thank you.
I think you're right. We lose regardless. But no, I think that's a great point. And I mean, I think it just further speaks to the uncertainty that there's no perfect way. I mean, we could have some certainty with trying to purchase them now, but even that, as Councillor Solda has pointed out, could be reasonably limited. Yeah, thank you. Councillor Haggard.
From the reading that I have been doing, a lot of countries are looking at buying other models from different countries, so we may not want to buy a Chevrolet Ford. It might be some kind of vehicle from Mexico or some country in South America, a different kind of a model that is just as good or maybe even better. We don't know yet, but there's going to be lots of options out there.
Absolutely. Okay, any final comments on this piece? Okay, so council, we are voting on, I'm sorry, I kind of like marked my page up a little too much here, and so I can't fully see all the letters, but I think we're voting on A1, A through J. Great, thank you. Correct me if I'm wrong. Okay, on the motion, all in favor? Opposed? Motion carried, thank you. And next, we're going to vote on 2A and B as a pair, unless somebody would like to break those apart. Okay, any comments on these? And they're all considered moved and seconded. Okay. Seeing no comments on the motion, all in favor? Carried, none opposed. And now on 3, any comments? Seeing none on the motion, all in favor? Carried, none opposed. And on item 4, any comments? Seeing none on the motion, all in favor? Carried, none opposed. Thanks, everyone. And on item B, I think this one needs to be read still. Councillor Mealy.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Move that Council amend the City of Port Alberni 2025-2029 Financial Plan Bylaw number 5123-2025 to include $79,590 in 2025 for the annual tree planting project from the Community Forest Reserve Fund. Councillor Dame.
Thank you. Moved by Councillor Mealy, seconded by Councillor Dame. Any comments? Seeing none on the motion, all in favor? Any opposed? None opposed. Carried. And Councillor Mealy, go ahead for the last one.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Move that Council amend the City of Port Alberni 2025-2029 Financial Plan Bylaw number 5123-2025 to include 50% of the cost of replacing the multiplex rink boards in 2025 from the Community Forest Reserve Fund.
Thank you. Moved by Councillor Mealy, seconded by Councillor Solda. Any discussion? Seeing none on the motion, all in favor? Carried, none opposed. Thank you. And moving on to item number 4, we have Alberni Valley Restorative Justice and recommendations from the February 3rd, 2025, having a hard time with the dates today, Committee of the Whole meeting. I'm gonna go to Councillor Haggard for these.
Thank you. I'd like to move that Council direct administration to reallocate $20,000 within the RCMP 2025 budget to the Alberni Valley Restorative Justice Society as a one-time grant.
Thank you. Moved by Councillor Haggard, seconded by Councillor Solda. Any discussion? Councillor Patola.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I would not be voting for this because we don't really have any information on the effect of the RCMP budget by taking $20,000 out of it. I realize the RCMP has a large budget, and percentage-wise, this is a small amount. One would assume they could do without it, but I think that would probably be better to confirm whether they can or they can't before we pass this.
Thank you. I think that's a great comment. Are we able to get a sense of what the RCMP refunds have been over the last few years? Or not refunds, but the funds that we get back from our RCMP contract as surplus? Just to get an idea of if there is typically more than $20,000 returned to us.
Madam Mayor, so this past year, we didn't receive any extra because of the net increase in costs due to the collective agreement, their second collective agreement, and signing bonuses. So that ended up wiping out any surplus we had from the RCMP contract in 2024. So nil.
Do you know, though, the prior years? Because this year was a little unique for that reason as a result of the signing bonuses.
Yeah. Madam Mayor, generally, it's probably about between 1 and 2 underutilized members, so that would probably be in the $300,000 to $400,000 range.
Thank you. Okay. Alberni comments? Councillor Haggard.
I would just like to point out that the RCMP works very closely with the Alberni Valley Restorative Justice Society and refers them a lot of clients. And also Restorative Justice works to lower the crime rate, because when you go this process, the chances of recommitting or reoffending another crime is almost at 0%. So it does save on that.
Thank you. Councillor Patola.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I won't repeat my long-winded speech from the Committee of the Whole meeting, but that basically raises, Councillor Haggard's comments raise the same question, which is, should the city be supporting what is essentially corrections of any offenders within our society, which is a provincial designation. The BC government pays for corrections, whether it be in the community or within an institution, and we pay taxes for that already. So in addition to the number of clients that the RCMP refer to restorative justice, they also refer a lot of clients to the court system who are set up to handle those referrals in the way that they are. So I don't think that we should be paying and extending resources from the city to something that is not within the city's jurisdiction. That's a summary of what I said last time. I remain of that point of view. Thank you.
And I continue to agree with you on that point of view. And at the same time, I continue to support this as a one-time initiative, I think, to support really incredible work that's being done in our community that I would argue is having, or not argue, because nobody I think is arguing this point, but rather I would say has a really positive effect on reducing the overall crime that is happening in our community for a very low amount of money. And I do acknowledge that it was my motion to reduce the RCMP budget by $20,000 to make room for this. And I recognize that that's not necessarily the It's not necessarily a traditional way to fund this. However, I do think with a $10 million budget and the refunds that, or the returns that we have had from the contract, certainly 9 out of 10 years that I've been on council, those have exceeded $200,000 a year. I think that this is a sustainable place for us, or a reasonable place for us to one time be able to fund this, make a positive impact in our community while not asking the taxpayers to pay more. So I think it's a bit non-conventional. I'll definitely agree with you on that. But my hope is that this is able to keep the good work going, and for a group that is largely volunteer and making a very positive impact in our community. Any other comments? Okay, seeing none on the motion, all in favor? Carried, none opposed. Thanks, everyone. And Councillor Haggard, if you want to continue.
I'd like to move that council direct administration to assist the Alberni Valley Restorative Justice Society in locating suitable office space within city facilities and offer to the organization as an in-kind contribution.
Thank you. Moved by Councillor Haggard, seconded by Councillor Mealy. Comments? Councillor Solda.
Madam Mayor, is the contribution, are we looking at it for a year, or is it just as long as they want it? Because I missed that discussion. I left early.
Councillor Haggard.
I believe for the office space, it was for as long as it was needed. However, for the Echo Fieldhouse request, it was for till the end of 2025. Then they have to apply to the CIP program.
So if I can do a follow-up, so will they have to pay anything, or is it just a, oh, it says on in kind, but we do that for a few organizations, so this one will be part of it, I'm assuming.
I'm wondering if this motion should be amended to be more in line with item C, where it has said, or sorry, whichever, where it says that for this year and then going forward, they would need to apply to CIP for that in-kind contribution. I think that's a small amendment, but rather than just saying we're going to in perpetuity potentially give a free office space, let's work to find a solution for this year and then ask that they go through our normal process, which is CIP for years going forward.
I would agree with that, Madam
Would you like me to amend the motion?
That'd be lovely.
Okay. I'd move that council direct administration to assist the Alberni Valley Restorative Justice Society in locating suitable office space within city facilities and offer to the organization as an in-kind contribution ending December 31st, 2025, and to apply for the Community Investment Program for the year 2026 onward.
Thank you. Moved and seconded. Okay. Any further comments? Seeing none. On the motion, all in favor? Any opposed? Motion carried. Thank you. And go ahead with item C, Councillor Haggard.
I'd have moved that council direct administration to accommodate the Alberni Valley Restorative Justice Society access to the Echo Park Fieldhouse up to a maximum of 3 times per month to use a circle space scheduled around other facility bookings at no cost up to and including December 31st, 2025, and further that council direct administration that the Alberni Valley Restorative Justice Society be required to apply for the Community Investment Program for the year 2026 onward for continued support from the City of Port Alberni for the use of city facility meeting spaces.
Thank you. Moved and seconded. Any comments? Seeing none. On the motion, all in favor? Any opposed? Motion carried. Thanks, everyone. Okay, moving on to question period. This is an opportunity for members of the public to ask questions of council on decisions or recommendations made during the course of the meeting, and up to 3 questions per speaker are permitted. Would anyone like to ask questions today? Roland, come on forward.
Hello. Just to start, I know most of you, I like all of you, and I tend to be diplomatic and respectful and thoughtful in how I engage. I disagree with a lot of the Facebook antics that go on. But I'm going to just state publicly, from after coming to council meetings and engaging with administrations for 15 years, to put the time that, not just myself, I didn't tell anyone I was coming today. And there's a few of us that come here and put some time and thought into asking our questions and trying to get information out. I defend the city a lot of times in the community. I've got communication from administration that they appreciate that I try to put the truth out to the city, and I admit that I don't know what I don't know, and I'm willing to learn. So when I got the email on February 3rd that we all got, that you're not going to be answering questions because of an overtime ban, because administration is burdened. I'm listening earlier today that the bulk of the work of the budget meeting was done in the fourth quarter. We're at the end of January, at 8:01 a.m., January 31st, the overtime ban came in. The very next business day, which was Monday, February the 3rd, everybody was burdened and could not answer questions. So the first question here is how much overtime, typically by bargaining unit employees, is incurred as an expense to the taxpayer in a budget cycle, and specifically for this budget, for the fourth quarter and up to January 30th, with respect to supporting specifically the preparation of this year's budget. Because the logical inference is that there has to be a lot of overtime put in because there's now an overtime ban, and now we're all burdened. So let's start there.
Thanks, Roland. I obviously don't have that number offhand, but what I will say is the shift was simply to not automatically add questions from members of the public to our budget Q&A doc. Not permanently, but rather because the overtime ban was a piece of that, but not the whole picture. So if you were watching our last meeting, we did have a brief discussion about that too when it came up on the budget Q&A. Generally, our staff are having a hard time getting to all of the questions from members of the public that are, I think, being asked to go on that budget Q&A doc. And you'll know that that Q&A doc has only been in place for a couple of years. It doesn't have a formal terms of reference, but it's sort of shifted over the last couple of years, where it was originally a Q&A doc for council, and then council started adding member of the public questions, and then we just started in an automatic way, adding questions from members of the public. The intent was really to have council control that document. So it's not to say that questions from members of the public will not be answered, as they always are, in time, but rather, as we're going through our budget, and certainly like in the final weeks of our budget, that we want our staff to be able to get to the questions that council has in a timely manner so that we can get the information we need, and that we don't necessarily have capacity to answer on the budget Q&A documents before the next council meeting, every single question from members of the public. What council does have the ability to do is to add any question that we receive to that document. So council still has that. You can ask a question here today, about, like, obviously I don't have that overtime information, and I can say, or any member of council can say, can we add that to the Q&A document? So it's not a perfect answer, Roland, and I mean, I'm sure that you know it. There's not a perfect process, right? Council and staff make every effort to answer questions from members of the public, and I'm sure you can appreciate that, especially at times when there's a lot going on, it sometimes gets challenging to do that. If we miss a question from a member of the public, then we hear that criticism as well. So we can't always get them on the exact next Q&A document, and that leads to challenges as well. So for a short period of time, we've said the budget Q&A document is not for that. That doesn't mean your questions won't be answered. It just means we're shifting the process. So I know that the overtime ban was a part of the communication that went out, but I want to be clear that this was not like a overtime ban's in place and therefore we're changing the budget Q&A. It was just general staff capacity, and that was one piece of it. And Mike, I'll just let you add if you want to that at all.
Yeah, thanks. And through the chair, nice to see you, Roland. Yeah, it wasn't necessarily overtime from the members. Part of it was the possible action that has been taken and some of the preparation that administration has to do in these situations. So that was one piece of it. The other is it's a difficult budget year this year, and council was asking a lot of administration for lots of reports. So we were finding that administrative staff was having to stay in overtime or come in earlier than usual, because you might come by City Hall and see our lights on at 6 in the morning and late meetings, everything like that. So again, we do work to try and get all of council's questions answered, but there started to be times when we would have to ask the mayor, what questions do you want us to prioritize for the next meeting? So in that time, we decided that, okay, until we have more capacity that we can answer these in a timely manner, we'll leave it up to council to put it on us to answer those questions.
Yeah, and council receives the questions, right? So if there are any that we feel in the moment are important for us to be able to make our budget deliberations, then we will add those to the budget Q&A. I do think it's important to recognize that, like, this is not generally how we want to be, and I don't anticipate that those questions will not be answered. Rather, when we're asking for reports on a variety of things in order to make our budget deliberations for this year, we know that this is not a standard budget year, right? The amount of tax increase that we're talking about is not standard. We're all looking for ways to bring that down, but we need information in order to be able to do that. So that's really the shift and reason is we're trying to gather the information that we feel we need to make budget deliberations.
Well, that's so long. Yeah, I understand that people are busy. The timing of that, perhaps the timing was off. The optics did not look very good at all, in my personal view. But to be honest, Madam Mayor, I'm still waiting for answers from Twyla Slonsky. So and I'm not the only one, and that's where I disagree. Again, I'll reiterate, I disagree with some of the keyboard warriors on Facebook. I respect you all. I don't make things personal. Let's just talk about the substance of the issue. But there's also a tinge of, I think we all need to understand, there's a tinge of truth and frustration in a lot of these people in that they're experiencing what I'm experiencing to a degree. Other individuals who come here that I speak with and we share. I know you guys know that we communicate with ourselves and we have every right to. And I think it's an area where the organization has got to do a better job collectively, not just yourself, Madam Mayor, I'm not saying that, the entire organization. And it's a little frustrating as a taxpayer who does put in the time, and the questions I asked are clearly have an impact on the budget. We've got retroactive pay, we're retroactive with the fire department again, and they impact the budget, their budget questions, and that conversation did not come up during this entire budget cycle. Nobody talked about that liability, but it's there. So that's why I raised the question, and it was, we can't answer that question. It is a budget question. With respect, Madam Mayor, it is a budget question.
Yeah, agree with you completely on that, Roland, and I'm not at all saying that it's not, and certainly members of council are able to provide their thoughts and impact here as well. My point is, if it's not coming up, it's because council probably, generally knows, is aware, and it's a budget question, but it's not a budget change for this year. So we're aware of it generally, but it's not something that's leading us to shift the budget for this year. Now, that said, again, it's not a perfect system. I appreciate completely that, if you're waiting on questions from a member of staff who doesn't work here anymore, I would suggest you re-ask them. But I know that members of council and members of our staff spend a lot of effort trying to give information to the public. We actually have been talking about ways that we could possibly shift this, because what we do is we give repetitive information a lot, and it's challenging to get that out broadly. So one thing we talked about really recently was, could we have a page on our Let's Connect PA website that is something like recently asked questions, and if a member of the public asks for information and we provide it, we post it there. And then if somebody asks again, it's there. You can just go find it. We might even say it's on this page. because it is really challenging nowadays to get information out to members of the public in a way that is transparent. And I would say that I think our staff do an excellent job and spend a whole lot of their time and all of our resources. We are all the taxpayers of the city. And so when our staff are answering questions instead of doing the rest of their job, that does take away from other things. So I don't want our staff answering the same question, in a few different ways 10 times. We'd all like, I think, a more efficient system. So I can assure you that this is on our minds. We do know that we need to do better. I think a part of that is better process, not necessarily better responsiveness, because I do think that our staff do an excellent job of trying to get to all of the questions, and that they typically do. It just, sometimes it's the same questions over and over, and so maybe we need to get those out more broadly, and we'd welcome your ideas if you have different ideas on how we can get that out more broadly. But yeah, I would just, I guess, ask you to bear with us over the next, period of time as we do try to finish up our budget discussions. And still, we're at second reading today, and I think council still really wants to probably make more changes to the budget. You've watched all of our budget, years, and it's pretty uncommon that we're at this point in a budget process where we're at second reading, and I don't think anyone on council is feeling like we've got the budget basically done. We want more information, we want more reports. This is not where we should be, and it's because of the challenges that we're facing this year. And we did start early, and it's still a challenging place for council to be. So we are asking a lot more of our staff at this point in the year than we typically are.
Sure, yeah, no, so we'll just say on that, and I'll just circle back, but today there were no suggestions for alterations to the budget, if I understand that correctly. You're just waiting for stuff that you've asked for at the previous committee of the whole, or some previous meeting, because there were no council decisions today to make any amendments to the budget, so.
Because they were made at the committee of the whole,
Okay,
and they were passed
and
today.
you're just endorsing what you.
That's right, yeah.
So next week's committee of the whole, you'll
Exactly.
revisit this again. Okay, and then have your fulsome discussion. With respect to the idea, what you just said, Madam Mayor, I'm going to go back to my email history, but I suggested that very point, that if I ask a question, or my friend in the gallery here, or other people out in the public, don't just answer me, put it to the public. And then I totally agree with staff. If someone phones a corporate officer or the CAO, they say, we answer the question, we'll direct you to, and then it's over. They don't spend that time. I totally appreciate, I was an administrator, I appreciate the time, and I've always gotten along well with all city staff who've worked here. And there's a lot of things I won't bother them with, but yes, that is one way you could improve it. Don't just share an answer with me, put it out there, so. But that's all for today. Someone else may want to speak, so thanks for your time.
Thanks, Roland. Okay, questions from other members of the public? Joseph?
Mayor and Council, just going to make a statement and a question in there, just for optics again, with looking at things to do with the heritage, industrial heritage, that whole building. There's been some discussion around that budget-wise and through parks also. And it was brought up initially, so just for optics, and I want to ask you if you can see how the public might be perceiving this. First of all, it was brought up that there's a lot of costs involved, and of course there are, and it's going to need some repairs. And then of course there was recommendations made on what to do, and currently it's sitting where there's discussions going to be made with those that are currently using the facilities. I think that's where it stands at this point. There was mention of demolishing as one of them, selling it, a number of different ideas that were around that. So nothing is firm on that yet. So where there's that, which I think it came out of the blue to a lot of people that are involved in that building. It was sort of unexpected, kind of a bit of surprise. And then recently at another meeting, it was brought up, and we know that there's lead in water all over the city. In schools, even I think in our new high school, they found levels of it contained in that. And so again, just from optics, just from looking at that, saying, why was that brought up at this point? It was brought up that there is high levels in the building and water was shut down. And again, it seems to be leading towards here's the reasons why we are looking at this and maybe demolishing it or looking at something because. So here was another thing. It just came out. It wasn't another building. It was that building that was mentioned at its high levels. And it's probably it's true. But again, why was that looked at so soon and why was it brought up? And then last week during the meeting, it was brought up about insurance. And insurance, it mentions currently is under the administration portion of the financial plan. They want to separate them out, showing what they are per facility within the city-owned properties. The very first thing on that items where it says we're going to separate these out and show them in the financial, in the budget, we're going to show what these are. The very first thing is Industrial Heritage Center and curling rink, and it gives an amount for that, the very first thing. And then there's four choices made. So just curious how you would see this if you're just a general public and this seems to be this concession of things. If you were a poker player, I'm not a poker player, but if you were sitting across the table to a dealer, there's a term that's used when the dealer does something with a deck. And again, it's optics, and I'm not saying anything, it's just an observation. This is how some people might feel. There's a term, and I'm sure we all know it. What is the dealer doing with that deck? Anybody know? What would you be calling that? Rigging the deck or stacking the deck? No, it's just optics. I'm just saying this is what it appears. Oh, you mean to ask you that question? Okay, I'm sorry, ask the question what you might say call that. So I'm just going to say what it's called by somebody. It's optics appear to be so. And it's probably not the case, but I'm just wondering, can you see how the public might be seeing that as a possibility of we're leaning things towards it might be totally appropriate, but how that looks to the public? Can you see how they might feel that way?
How do you think the members of the public would feel drinking water with extremely high levels of lead in it?
Not great, because we've all been drinking lead for a long time, obviously.
Not in that level.
Yeah, but again, I'm just saying the optics of it, because that building there's all these buildings that are being looked at, but that was brought up at a meeting specific, and that's good. I mean, it has to be put stalled. So what I'm asking is, it appears like these things are being brought up, and could you see how from somebody who's just out there, the community listening and watching, why does it seem to be so much pushing towards? And the demolishing or doing something with that, how it sort of seems to be leaning towards making it look totally without, and I'm glad right now it's being looked at by giving the opportunity to the people there to sit down and say, what can we do? But so there's another cost put on that thing. So sorry if it sounded inappropriate, but it's just, again, the way maybe some of us are feeling and perhaps the way I'm feeling.
I'll go to our CAO.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, a complicated question there. I'm sure there are lots of perceptions out there about lots of things. It's administration, we're supposed to bring liabilities to council's attention, and we're supposed to do that within a certain time frame. When we have huge expenditures coming up on a building, we have to bring that to council's attention. So by trying to populate a 5-year plan with a possibility, if we take no action on remediating the building, that it would be in a point in 5 years of demolition was what was brought forward. That gives lots of time for the public to be consulted, the groups that are in the building to be consulted. I think people didn't read through the full report, didn't see the options that if we did replace the roof, did take the actions in the report, possibly demolition could be not happen. But if we didn't do it, which the current 5-year plan did not have that in it, then that would be an option. It's the same as not replacing your roof on your house and allowing it to do it. At the same time, the school board, just before, had done some testing and found that there was sources of lead in some of their buildings. So the city, through our Joint Health and Safety Committee, some of the employees said, hey, when was the last time we tested ours? So we tested some city facilities that are of an age that could contain lead. By not reporting when we got the results back on the lead, that would have been very egregious. And just as if you knew that your well was contaminated, but you invited visitors in and gave them the water, that wouldn't be right. We have a duty as a public authority to actually post that and let them know. Whether or not the time and the perception of public means that they didn't like how we released it, that information still needs to come forward. So I understand how you're piecing these together, but the city is not a card game, and it's not a poker game. So as we get facts and as we bring things forward, we have to do it when we have the information to bring it forward to public. That report was through a facility assessment. We still haven't brought the full report to council because we brought that forward as soon as we had the information. We weren't waiting for lead testing. We weren't waiting for other things. We knew this was going to be a difficult budget year, and to populate that 5-year plan, we wanted to make sure council had the information to deal with it. As far as taxation, we've made a lot of changes in the budget this year. A lot of changes in the way that the public can see the budget. The reason we're doing that is we're trying to be more transparent on what services cost. It is not picking on one area or another. But again, by doing that and making things more transparent, people can perceive things about that action. Just as before, when I got here, people were saying that we weren't transparent enough. We weren't sharing information in a manner that the public could see it. So the perception at that time is we were hiding things. So we've tried to make changes with that to make sure that people like yourself, Joseph, could understand that. So again, the perception can be taken in lots of ways. The municipality is doing what it can with the resources we have and getting as much information as we can to the public.
Councillor Patola, and then Councillor Mealy and Councillor Dame.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. And thank you for the question, Joseph. I think the answer to what do we think, what do I think the public perceives from our stating of the truth and the facts, well, I think that depends on what your perception is of the truth. So all we can do is present what we know. I cannot control what somebody will conclude from that. All I can do is give them the best information and the most information so they're in the best position to make an appropriate and credible conclusion. Somebody once said, famously, life is like a box of chocolates, meaning that when you open that, you don't know what you're going to get. I think, though, it's reasonable to assume that if your box of chocolates is a box of vanilla creams, you're going to get vanilla creams. So you may be wondering why there is a lot of information about a particular building. I think that's because we're looking at a particular building. And we're looking at particular issues that come out of that building. And then we go and we look at other buildings that might have those same particular issues. So we're not running around putting lead in the water just to taint the results. So we're not stacking the deck, as you were suggesting. We are simply reporting to the public, here's the box, we opened it up because that's our job, and here's what we found.
Thank you, Councillor Patola, Councillor Mealy, and then Councillor Dame.
Thank you very much, Madam Mayor. Thank you very much, Mr. Liskosik, if I get that right. I try to get that right every time, I really do. So and just because we brought up the school district, I'm the liaison for the school district. It was brought up at the last meeting. So they've been doing testing for all their facilities, new and old. And they did say at the meeting, it's not the city's water, but it is the facilities, and even newer facilities are having some higher levels. So, but I do agree with Councillor Patola. It's not a stacking the deck. It's just whenever we look at something, and it is staff's duty to bring that forward to us. So, and just for public safety in general. So, but I appreciate your comments, sir.
Thank you, Councillor Dame.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And I think most of what I wanted to say has already been stated here by others, but just because the implications of some of what has been said here tonight calls into question the integrity of a lot of people. I do feel compelled to just comment that that information, whether convenient or inconvenient, that's irrelevant as far as transparency goes, because I would consider this actually quite inconvenient. despite the perception, because the optics of it are not lost on us. I looked at it and immediately cringed and went, ugh, that doesn't look great based on recent conversation. However, true transparency says we present this information regardless of the optics. And we, even knowing that there will be theories, passed around based on that. And so you could look at it as, well, convenient for the city to suddenly find this information, or you could look at it as very inconvenient because the optics aren't great, which is the angle that I took on it personally. So I hope that that side of the coin is considered as well, as we continue to strive for greater transparency and communication. And yeah, I think that's all I really had to say on that. So, but certainly, I understand that those ideas are out there, those questions, those wonderings, and I think it's fair to raise them and ask. But I think hopefully there is an understanding in the public. Hopefully there is. It's obvious that we're doing our best to try to continually improve on this subject of transparency and communication. So.
Great, thank you. And that opinion is out there for sure. I've just talked to people in public, just in general. I don't get out there and spread rumors. I just talk, and that's just the general sense from people that I've spoken with. And to present it in such a way so that there's not that, perhaps it's more inclusive, as in, here's all of our buildings and here's what we found. Here's what's in the building on Tebow that's rented by what?
Just for information, before this goes further, we have put all of the results online that we have tested. And I would say that the biggest challenge in we are aware that there are many conspiracy theories out in the public. The biggest challenge is getting information to people. Everybody wants to have an opinion and comment. Very few people will watch our meetings, watch the discussion, go to the source, ask the questions. So it is extremely challenging to correct things. And even yourself, who, you do your due diligence, you come to the meetings, you still think that we've just picked one building to hear or to test for lead.
Again, I don't think it's just an observation. Again, optics thinking. So yeah, thank you. And I could explain a bit more, but there's no need. But I've had experience in the past with things that have been done in other municipalities that were, you would say, not as upfront as they could be. And I'm not saying that's the case here. I'm just saying this is just general, an observation, and wondering how you felt and how the public might perceive. But thank you. That's good. I won't say too much. I didn't mean to say that much, just what was your perception that people might pick up on that? Okay, thank you. I have a second question. Lighter. I didn't mean to get that heavy with that. Sorry about that, everybody, and for those watching. Again, we grew up in, this is Canada, and I listen too much to CBC, who always says, throw in your comments in there. Send us what your thoughts are. So maybe that's a little too Canadian, I'm not sure. Thanks, CBC. So the other question I have is, you brought up it was brought up in a couple meetings about the planting of trees, and it was decided to not include it in this year's budget and the following years. And then it was brought up again, very impassioned talk by Councillor Haggard about the need for trees. And I love trees, absolutely love trees. You know, if we could live in the trees, I would, but I'm not. Yeah, I live in a house. But the question I want to ask you is, because there are, I have a city-owned tree in my front yard. And I'm going to ask you, Mayor Minions and Councillor Haggard, if you would come to my house and just to see, this of course was a decision made by past council and mayor that the tree was planted a number of years ago. And I know I've had staff out to have a look at it, and they informed me, even if they wanted to remove it, their hands are basically tied. So I'm wondering if you would come to my home and make an arrangement, time set, and just come and have a look and say, I hear why you're that concerned about tree planting. It's not that I'm against tree planting, I love trees. So if you guys would be willing to do that, I would love if you would do that, but I don't know if that's appropriate either, so thank you.
I'll only come if you give us a cup of tea.
Yeah, we'll come for tea, but not to inspect your tree, because I would say that that's a staff role, and that if our staff recognized a safety issue with one of the trees, then they would recommend to staff, not to council, to take that tree down. So no member of staff's hands are tied when it comes to trees being taken care of if they are a safety issue or interfering with infrastructure or whatever else. I don't know how we assess trees, but I do know that we have professional staff who do that. So council would not inspect your tree.
No.
However, staff, our professional staff, would have all the ability in the world to take out that tree if they felt they needed to. What they would not do is recklessly take down the tree because of a neighbor preference. And that has been sort of something that happened in this municipality in the past. I know when I got on council, a number of concerned residents actually came to me and said, our neighbor complained to the city that they didn't like their tree in front of their house because it obstructed their view. So the city came and cut the tree down. Like, how is that happening? And so we did have discussions at the time, and this is before anyone here, I think, was on council at that time. We did have discussions about not doing that's crazy, that trees are of value to all of us. They cost money to put them in. We should not be cutting them down because of someone's preference. So I have been advocating on this council for maybe a decade to have a tree policy, which we still do not have, but I do know is sort of underway and will come back to council at some point in the reasonably near future. But that said, in the meantime, staff's perspectives are valid, and if there's a reason to take a tree down, they have all the ability in the world to do that. But we will come for tea, as Councillor Haggard said,
So you'll
anytime.
come for tea and hear why I'm sort of a little hesitant when it comes to tree planting. Perfect. So how do I go about doing that? Contacting, say, okay, thank you. And thank you again. And sorry if yeah. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Are there questions from other members of the public? Roland?
Sorry, Mr. Noskosik held me up long enough that a marble shook loose. On my walk this morning, which I regularly walk the waterfront, I see you down there regularly, I saw you yesterday, I noticed a whole bunch of chain link fencing going up, which I know the property behind Port Boathouse is, I believe it's the Port Authorities, and so I see all that being fenced off. So I'm just curious what has sort of transpired there. I know there's different lease arrangements and stuff being discussed, but is there, or are you even able to speak to it at all?
Yeah, thanks for the question. We do have information on our website about that. If you go to, I believe it's Let's Connect, or under news. Okay, it's under news.
Okay.
We have a diagram of what happened in that location.
Okay.
It isn't our news to share. We did it jointly with Port Authority and the Port Boathouse. That whole area in behind that full parking lot, except for the part of the land that abuts the street, is actually Port Authority land.
Yeah, I was aware of that.
So the Port Boathouse has extended their lease out in the back of that with the Port Authority. So now they are leasing quite a ways further. So that's the fencing you're seeing going up. The trail will then be bypassed along. They're going to make sure they keep at least 2.1 meters in between the sort of their dock railing and the fence to make sure there's adequate pedestrian access.
Yeah.
And then it'll go down to near the, I believe it's the spill response vehicle parking.
That's right.
Is there.
Yeah, that's where it is.
There'll be enough of an entrance for the spill response vehicles to come in with a shared pathway to reconnect to the sidewalk that's out in front that goes down towards the Lighthouse Museum or comes back in to Harbor Key. So there is going to be sufficient public access around there. As the key-to-key started to get busier, there also started being more interactions behind the port boathouse where they do work on machinery and pull boats in and out. So this is safety for the public, but also better use for the port boathouse. And it's an exciting news that the port boathouse has that much need that they had to expand and take up that area for the Port Authority.
Good. All right. Great. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions? Okay, would somebody like to move adjournment? Moved by Councillor Mealy, seconded by Councillor Dame. On the motion, all in favor? Carried, none opposed, meeting adjourned.